Okay, I'm live, apparently. Anyway, so I hope everybody can see and hear me. Okay, and I'm here today to do a reading of my Christmas story, Fate and Fairy, from Christmas Lights 6. Yeah, 6. Okay, and here's the Christmas Lights 6. There we are. That's the book, and the story is. There we go. I hope everybody can see and hear me. Okay. Still trying to switch back from sharing screens there. Hopefully the audio's with us. If not, I apologize if I lost audio there. I don't know what was going on. I think they changed their screen sharing. So I'm here babbling apparently. But we're going to read the short story Fate and Fairy. Oh, look, I have a little Christmas glow from the tablet. There's my tablet. Anyway, so here we go. I'm going to read the story. So this is Fate and Fairy. And basically, it's sort of my continuation of the Snow Queen fairy tale. So here we go. The smell of pine, the spectacle of red holly berries against their greenery, and the crisp bite of winter air overflowed the woodland. Sina imbibed the wonder of it all, listening to her footsteps crackle in the snow as she walked. She held a bittersweet fascination with this time of year, a fact considered strange among her kind, the fairy. For most of her kin, winter meant retreating from the mortal world to their outland realm until spring. Yet to Sina, it was both beautiful and full of sorrow. Memories of her lost brother merged with the marvels of the season. She loved winter, but it was a reminder of things best left forgotten and promises yet to keep. And stranger still, mixed in with her conflicting emotions, was her fascination with the human celebrations of this season, which was the very reason she ventured out this early morn, the day before their Christmas. At the edge of the forest she stopped and looked out the human village beyond her home. Across the river, holiday songs wafted on the wind, and soon the church bells would ring in the observance of their festival. She liked the sweet sound of the bells, despite the taste of iron they lent to the air. Most human things carried the stench, the reek, and the tang of iron. It was one of the reasons her kind generally avoided them. But she had been taught to tolerate the metal, and it rarely bothered her. One of many things she learned from her mother. Footsteps. A noisy crunch through the snow, and the smell of salty mortal flesh alerted her. A human was about. Curious, she peered out from her cover of shadow and trees to see who approached. A man, fair-haired and handsome by human standards, likely from the village, by the look of his clothes, gathered kindling at the edge of the woods. She studied the nimble way he moved, the tilt of his head. For a moment he reminded her of Eli. No, best not to think of her brother, not on this beautiful morning. There will be time enough for memories tomorrow. Still she lingered, watching, and sweet snatches of music drifted on the wind. For a moment Sina smiled. The man was singing, one of his kind seasonal melodies, but the air of it felt old and deeply rooted in the earth. Enchanted by the sweet splendor of the tune, an almost familiar harmony, she listened to the exquisite song with a blissful enjoyment, until another sound drifted on the wind, the faint snarl of a wolf. She inhaled the slightest breath and drew her bronze knife from its sheath. She peered through the shadowed foliage, discerning shapes, 2 wolves stalking prey, but not her. They hunted the human. It would be so easy to slip back into the deeper woods and leave them to their quarry. Yet the notes of his beautiful song still echoed in her memory. She took a step. No, human affairs were not her concern. Sina backed away slowly, weapon ready if the wolves veered their attention to her. She faded into the forest without incident and turned to flee home, until she heard the church bells peal and the man scream. Something in her blood responded, a chilling to the very marrow, as if her veins turned to ice. Without thought, she whirled and raced back to the edge of the forest, knife drawn. She burst from the trees to see the man on the ground, struggling. He bashed one wolf about the head with a thick stick as it snarled and snapped at his arms and neck, while the other beast had its jaws clamped around his right leg. Sina leapt on that beast and plunged her knife in its throat. She sliced, and warm blood spurted, spilling against her skin, the man's limbs, and the snow. The beast slackened its jaws and fell dead in a heap. The remaining wolf turned on Sina with a snarl and a growl. The man scuttled away, leaving a trail of red, but held his stick at the ready. As Sina and the beast faced each other, waiting for the other to strike, the man scooped up a fistful of snow, packed it, and hurled it at the wolf. It smacked the side of the animal's head, and the distracted beast turned, teeth bared. Sina saw her opening, grabbed its head, and slid her weapon into its exposed throat. A last snarl and more blood signaled the end of the wolf's life. Sina stepped back and cleaned her knife and her hands in the snow. "Thank you, stranger. Thank you for saving my life." Sina snapped her head around and scurried back a few feet. She'd nearly forgotten the human. Every instinct told her to run. "Don't be afraid. I mean no harm." The man smiled at her and struggled to rise to his feet. "You have my gratitude." His words cut off in a cry of pain as his injured leg buckled, and he tumbled to the snow in a heap. "This is my chance. I should leave, disappear into the woods." But she stayed, watching him moan on the ground, trying to push himself up. Then her feet moved, not to the woods, toward the human. No thought, no plan, merely an instinct to help an injured creature. Yet in the back of her mind she wondered why. Why help this human? She bent down and packed snow against the wound to slow the bleeding. Then she encircled him with her arms and helped him to his feet. With her fairy strength, she had no trouble bearing his weight. A quick look of surprise crossed his face. "Thank you again, stranger." "Sina. My name's Sina." She spilled the words out, her voice gruff and clipped. "Where do you live? I'll help you home and see that injury is tended before I leave." "My home's down the path around the bend, not far at all." "And nice to meet you, Sina. I am Misha." He smiled. She didn't return his smile, but started walking, helping him limp along slowly. They shuffled down the path awkwardly, Misha wincing with each step, but trying to stay cheerful. "I haven't seen you in the village before. Are you newly come, or passing through?" "I'm not from your village." "From a neighboring one, then." "Oh." His leg buckled and he nearly fell. Sina yanked him upright. "Easy now. Concentrate on walking, not making conversation." She tried to sound comforting, but her words snapped more than soothed. Misha lapsed into silence and effort, to Sina's relief, until they finally arrived at his small cottage. "The door's not locked. We can go inside." She lifted the latch and pulled open the door. They hobbled across the threshold into a small and cozy, if chilly, room. Evergreen decorations hung on the walls and along the cupboards, and a basket of pine cones rested on the center table. An unlit great stone fireplace and hearth, festooned with more greenery, dwarfed it all. Sina spotted a cushioned, high-backed chair by the fireplace and helped Misha to sit in its comfort. He sighed as he settled onto the cushions and closed his eyes. For a moment, Sina thought to bolt from the house. She had never been in a human residence before. She felt awed until the faint sound of dripping water caught her attention. She glanced down and saw a puddle of melting snow and blood spreading on the floor. "Your leg needs tending. I'll need cloth for bandages and water to clean the wound. There's water in the jug on the table, and cloth and healing herbs in the bottom of the cupboard by the window." She hunted and rummaged and found the supplies. She sliced away the shredded cloth from his damaged trouser leg and carefully bathed the wound. The bite marks weren't deep, so she made a poultice and wrapped cloth around the leg in a tight bandage. To her relief, it appeared to cease bleeding. "That should do for now. Have it seen to by one of your village healers, though. I seem to keep doing this, but thank you again. I should repay your kindness. I don't have much, but there is cheese in the cupboard and a bit of Christmas cake. You're welcome to have some. No, despite a sudden hunger pain, she refused. I must go. Are you sure? I feel an unexpected shiver and a wince cut short his words. It's cold. I should build a fire. He struggled to rise from the chair, but Sina pushed him back down. You need to rest, not reopen that wound. I'll do it. Then I'll go. She bundled logs from an adjacent crate onto the recess of the hearth, stacking them with care and long practice. She placed a bit of kindling on top and then lit it with her own flint and tinder. Soon a nice fire was blazing. She turned to see Misha trying to squirm out of his winter coat. Exasperated, she said, "Let me help with that." She wriggled the coat off him and tossed it into a nearby chair. Then she noticed a silver locket with finely engraved designs hanging from his neck. Something about it captivated her attention. Again, that sense of something almost familiar. That's beautiful workmanship on the silver. A true craftsman made that. It was my mother's, hers since she was a child. It is very special. When she died, she gave it into my keeping. He smiled, an odd, faraway gesture, and then added, as if the words came unbidden, "Inside there is a small mirrored back, but I never open it." She almost asked why, but stopped herself, instead saying, "It's lovely." Her fingers itched to touch the exquisite piece of jewelry, but she resisted temptation. "But there's something about it." She looked away from the trinket and found her gaze staring into Misha's eyes. They faced each other, locked in a curious moment of connection. Misha's smile broke the odd reverie. "I'm sorry you won't stay, but leave with my gratitude. I was lucky you came along. The wolf attack was quite unexpected. I've not seen them that aggressive before." His smile abruptly vanished, and a frown creased his face. A shiver of misgivings trembled through her brain. Wolves don't behave like that. Something was off, and she would not be enticed to stay any longer in this dangerous place. "I should go." Misha nodded. "Perhaps you should before—" A yowl of winter wind cut off his words. Sina barely heard the next whisper. Too late. Panic welling, she abruptly whirled on her heel, fled to the door, and thrust it open, only to be greeted with a blustering whirlwind of snow and gale. She shoved against the door, fighting the wind, afraid and desperate to leave. The hinges and the wood creaked and groaned, but she could not budge it. As she exerted herself, two more whirlwinds ascended from the depths of the snow and slammed the door shut, propelling her backward. Sina fell, landing on her backside. "By the earth, protect us." A soft whisper escaped her, and she made a warning sign. "Are you all right?" She turned to see Misha's anxious face. "Please tell me that was just a storm blowing in," he said, a sliver of fear in his voice. "That's no storm. That was magic." As she spoke, the wind outside howled, rattling the windows and thumping at the entrance. Snow lashed against the glass and the shingles, and the air swept down the chimney, stirring the fire into snapping passion. Misha yelped and maneuvered sideways to avoid stray embers. "I was afraid this would happen some day." Misha gave her a mournful look. "I'm sorry you were dragged into my family affairs." Dread prickled along Sina's spine. Who was this man? "What are you talking about? What have you done?" "Nothing. I have done nothing. But my mother warned me the Snow Queen might return. For this." He wrapped his hand around his locket. "Yes, yes, yes! Give me my mirror!" A voice screamed in the blowing, driving snow that snapped a crackling drumbeat on the window panes and the roof of the cottage. The walls shook, and a shrieking howl echoed off the rafters. "I will have it! You may have escaped my wolves, but you will not escape me. I am coming." With those words, the wind ceased howling, and the windows stopped rattling, and the snow no longer scraped against the shutters and glass. Sina clenched her jaw. The Snow Queen. Her body trembled, bewildering emotion shrieking from the buried depths of her mind. She wanted to roar, to smash at the name that hung in the air between them. Her thoughts cascaded forward in a rush of questions. How is this possible, after all these years? She took a breath, afraid to hope. Could it be fate? Could fate have led me here this day to this man? Could this finally be my chance at a reckoning? A chance to end the ruler of the frozen lands? She turned on Misha. Tell me. Her tone demanded truth. What interest does the Snow Queen have in you and your trinket? Nothing good and nothing recent. Long ago my mother Gerda had an encounter with the Snow Queen. The tale is long and complicated and has been told many times. But one detail has never been repeated. There was a mirror, a troll's mirror, reflecting the world as evil and ugly. The Snow Queen wanted it for herself. Over long years she collected all the pieces, even if those pieces were held elsewhere. Misha smiled as if he told a private joke. However, my clever mother, stole a sliver of that mirror and hid it in this locket, where it cannot reflect anything unless opened. Because of that, the troll mirror could never be mended. That is why she's come for me. She wants the final piece to restore its power. Sina drew in her breath. Gerda's son, child of the woman who survived, who defeated the Snow Queen, saved her friend. It was fate. I know your mother's story. I was told the tale by my mother. Our family, too, encountered the Snow Queen. My brother was not as lucky as Gerda. The Snow Queen lured him from his home many years ago with lying promises and enchanted kisses. 3 kisses he received from her. The first when they met to numb her cold touch. The second to numb his heart and the memories of his family so he would stay with her. And the third kiss came when she tired of him, on your Christmas day. That kiss brought his death. Her voice caught briefly, a sob laced with anger. 3 kisses were all it took for him to die. I am sorry. Save your sympathy. Sina couldn't bear it. I want your fight instead. She will not get what she wants. The howl of the wind echoed her words. She's back. Sina impulsively rushed to the door and pushed it open. No whirlwinds of snow, no queen. Nothing save a darkening horizon, the drifting snow and wind, and a blackening sky. Sina moved her hand to her knife. She's coming on the storms of winter. It won't take her long. We must prepare. She shut the door, ready to fight. She unlaced her pouch from her belt and removed it from beneath her coat, shucking off the blood-stained woolen garment at the same time. She fumbled through the small leather sack and breathed a sigh. It's there. I didn't forget. With a smile, she extracted 3 things: a charm made of feathers, stone beads, and amber, tied on a leather string, a small glass vial of oil wrapped in velvet to prevent breaking, and an amulet created from bone and silver. She placed the vial on the table, slipped the amulet around her neck, and turned back to Misha, the charm in one hand and the pouch in the other. Here, this will afford you some protection against her magic. She bent down and tied the charm to his locket. That will make it difficult for her to steal the mirror. She made a sign of warding and said a quick spell of protection. The charm glowed with a bright tawny color and energy flowed into Misha's body. He gasped. It tingles. He stared directly into her eyes. Who are you? A witch? Or something more? She hesitated, then dropped any pretense. I am fairy. She expected fear and anger, but Misha surprised her. That explains much. Welcome to my war, Sina of the fairy. May we both survive this day. She let out a relieved breath and withdrew a small scroll of paper from the pouch. She handed it to Misha. The charm will protect you long enough for you to use this. It is a spell, even when a human can work. You can use it to escape if I fail. You must protect the locket at all costs. He nodded, but asked, if you fail in what? You'll see. She tied her pouch back on her belt, and a hint of a smile danced on her face before she returned to work. She unwrapped the vial and smoothed the velvet on the table. She placed her knife on the cloth and poured the oil over the bronze blade, coating both sides carefully and rubbing the excess off with the velvet. What are you doing? Misha's curiosity bubbled out. Strengthening the blade so it will have the power to kill the Snow Queen. The oil is a combination of sage, pine, wintergreen, and a drop of dragon's blood. All it needs now is some special fairy magic. She wrapped her left hand around the amulet and placed her right on the knife blade. She spoke in a soft whisper. Dobry Ilya Widden Ver. Tenders of Tendrils of emerald light drifted from the amulet, glided between her fingers, and penetrated the metal blade. The bone and bronze shone in radiance and turned a muted shade of green. The amulet on her chest pulsed momentarily in the same luminescent shade as did her skin and eyes. There, it is done. She picked up the knife. What is done? Magic I can see, but what? A spell of my mother's making, a spell of spring and earth to ward away the snow and wind of winter. One designed to fight the Snow Queen and avenge my brother. A haunted look passed over her face. Like you, I carry a legacy. I made a promise to my mother when she died, to end the reign of the Snow Queen. Until this morning I thought it would go unkept. But now, she smiled, I will face her, and one of us will be vanquished. There will be a battle here today. Then may luck and fortune be on your side. He smiled sadly as if he believed her to be doomed. One thing I would like to know before you face her. Why did you save me? I know the fairy avoid the affairs of humankind. As she shimmered back to her woolen overcoat, as she shimmied back into her woolen overcoat, she tilted her head, puzzled at his interest, but answered, The song you were singing. I don't know why, but I couldn't let you die after hearing it. Misha chuckled softly. My mother taught me that song. Fate. As if she had any doubts of that, his words erased them. Thank you for singing it and for giving me the chance to defeat her. Sina grinned. I will win, you know. Her fingers tightened on the hilt of her knife. This is what my mother trained me for. I will fight her. You will stay inside. The charm will protect you from any attack that slips by me, but just in case. She moved forward and slipped the poker from its stand by the fireplace. The iron burned slightly in her hand, but she ignored it and handed the instrument to Misha. This metal will dissuade any magical creatures, and it will bash the heads of any wolves very nicely. He hefted it. Yes, it should suffice as a weapon. Good. Now stay inside, as I said. Sina turned without another word and left, latching the door behind her. She walked out into swirling snow and the menace of dark gray skies above her. The storm was coming. The Snow Queen was coming. Sheets of wind and hurling sleet stung her face and plucked at her clothes, while the dark clouds seethed in the sky, shadowing the morning light. The tops of the woodland trees bent in the gale, and the thickening, driven snow made it difficult to see. But something's moving. A shape. Is it? Yes, she's here. From within the shrieking storm, an open high-backed sleigh glided along the snow-covered ground, pulled by 5 enormous wolves. A regal, icy figure sat tall, spine straight, nestled among the thick white furs. More alabaster fur draped her body in the form of a long coat with a matching Ushanka hat. Her hands, clad in long pale gloves trimmed in more ashen fur, gripped the sleigh's leather reins, along with a cruel-looking whip. The Snow Queen had arrived. Okay, I'm going to one small break here for a glass of water for my throat. Okay, and now we continue. Sina firmed her stance and brandished her knife as the sleigh skidded to a halt a few feet away. The wind died to a faint flutter, and the snow to a mere sprinkling. The wolves glared and growled, and the woman in the sleigh laughed. So a slip of a girl dares to stand in my way. Fairy by the stench of you. Another laugh. I've killed hundreds of your kind. You and your tiny weapon won't stop me. Get out of my way and spare me the trouble of swatting you into oblivion. I am more than a match for you, Snow Queen. My tiny knife will put an end to you. Sina waggled her blade while slipping her other hand behind her back. Within its palm she worked a bit of magic. Her amulet pulsed slightly. That did not escape the notice of the Snow Queen. A magic worker, I see. Something I know well. Power crackled in her eyes, frosty blue, and icy sparks snapped from her fingers. Step aside, I said. In magic I prefer to act, not posture. Sina swung her hand from behind her back and threw a spear of energy at the Snow Queen. Taken by surprise, the emerald force hit her square in the chest and smashed her into the sleigh. The wolves lunged at Sina to protect their mistress, but harnessed, they tangled and stumbled into one another, snarling and snapping. Sina nimbly avoided their attack, but they delayed her long enough for the Snow Queen to recover. Impudent woodling filth! Feel the wrath of winter! The air crackled in blizzard hoarfrost, and Sina felt her breath freeze, her steps slow. The Snow Queen conjured a gale from the tips of her fingers and thrust it directly at Sina. Wind and weather, swathed in magic, born of 1,000 winters and frigid northern glaciers, hit her, flinging her into the air and slamming her against the cottage. Sina felt her skin chilling in a layer of rime, her blood and bone freezing, her body turning to ice. From frosty blue lips she whispered desperate words. Thabri Ilya, Vishana, Vishana. The amulet pulsed softly, softly, reaching far within her being. Magic filled her core, thawing the cold, the ice bringing fresh life back to her body. Melted frost dripped from her, and warm air wafted in the perfume of roses and apple blossoms. She turned to the Snow Queen, glowing verdant in the power of spring, overflowing with mystical energy. The Snow Queen shrieked, "That's not possible!" Her eyes flashed blue when she fumbled to summon her own might, but it was too late. Sina blasted her with the amulet's magic, smashing her into the ground. She dashed forward and leapt at the Snow Queen, plunging her knife into her chest and channeled all of the power of the amulet into the blade. The Snow Queen screamed as the magic of the spell and spring flowed through her body, pulsing, coursing, melting every inch of frost and snow that fused her flesh, her blood, her heart. In air haunted by the scent of newborn flowers and the warmth of sunlight, the Snow Queen shuddered, bones cracking, skin fracturing, her body convulsing, splintering. She shattered, every inch of her breaking, transforming. Sina cried out and rolled to the side as the Snow Queen exploded, bursting into shimmering icy snowflakes to be borne aloft by a winter wind. On her knees, Sina watched the remnants float into the sky. Her aching muscles snaked pain through her nerves, and the tiredness of her soul filled her with exhaustion. She let go of the magic, and her emerald glow faded. Around her, the sleigh collapsed into puffs and drifts of snow, and the wolves fled, fading into the shadows of the forest. It was over. The Snow Queen was gone. She stared at her knife, now returned to its bronze and bone, and wept. For her brother, for the sacrifices made by her mother, and for the promise she kept. It was over. She was free. Softly in the distance the church bells pealed, and a faint voice sang a song of Christmas. Sina smiled and wiped away her tears. She rose and returned to Misha's cottage. Relief flooded her face, and his white-knuckled grip loosened on the poker. "You won, I see." "I did. The Snow Queen is gone, returned to the winter winds that bore her into this world. You are safe. I do not presume to understand much of this, but I am glad. Glad she is gone, and you are unharmed." He held out the spell she gave him. "You'll want this back, no doubt, and the charm as well." He went to untie it from the locket, but Sina laid a hand against his. "Keep the charm. The locket and the mirror should stay protected. But I'll take back the spell." Impishly, she snatched the paper scroll from his fingers and tucked it into her pouch. Misha chuckled. "Fair enough. But you must stay for some late breakfast." She shook her head. "I can't. I need to think, to be alone." "I understand, but you are missing some tasty Christmas cake." He drew in a sudden breath as if struck by an idea. He smiled. "Come tomorrow, then, for Christmas dinner. I will be cooking goose and carrots and many fine things. Instead of wolves and magic battles, we will feast and drink wine." The idea tickled at her joy. She smiled. "I would like that. I will come." Then Sina said her farewells and headed out Misha's door for her home, happy they would meet again on Christmas Day. For the first time in years, she could celebrate it, not mourn. A grin still on her face, she slipped into the woods to the echoing sound of the church bells. Okay, so that was Fate and Fairy. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm going to leave you with another little snippet from this year's story in Christmas Lights 9, as soon as I boot it up here. Give me a minute. Okay, trying to wrangle the Kindle. Yeah. There we go. Okay. All right, so we're just going to... Yeah, waiting for the tablet here. Okay. All right, so this year's story in Christmas Lights 9 is called The Reindeer Solution. And I'm going to give you a little snippet. You don't get the whole story with this one. Anyway, so here's a little snippet. It began with Rudolph, or more accurately, his ego. Stupid puffed up reindeer, Fen grumbled. Puts on airs, he does, with his, oh, I'm a star. I only eat organically grown corn feed. Only the best quality magic additives for me. I have to soar. Malarkey. I don't even think of that. He doesn't even think of that extra work he gives us. I'm Santa's head elf. I have better things to do than cater to Rudolph. I should be organizing the work schedule for the holiday season, not playing errand elf. He stacked the last imported feed bag in the barn with an angry shove. But, sir, Jingles, Fen's assistant, replied, he is a star, isn't he? A glorified headlight, more like. He's always been full of himself. Why do you think they wouldn't let him play in those reindeer games as a young calf? Rudolph tried to boss everyone around and take over, even throwing tantrums if he didn't get his own way. He was the bully. Fen shook his head, disgust on his face. Santa shouldn't indulge his whims. It's creating resentment with the rest of the herds. I receive complaints every day about Rudolph's behavior, and there's nothing I can do about it. Fen ground his teeth. I mean, look at this. He waved his hand at the specialty feed bags. And there are kegs of his imported mountain spring mineral water in the next storage shed. Do you know how much all this costs? Jingles shook his head hard enough to make his hat bells ring. Too much, that's what. And it all comes out of the maintenance budget. We had to slash the perks for the other reindeer to help pay for it. They won't be pleased with that, I can tell you. And who'll be blamed? The elves. Once this breaks, those deer will be lined up to air their grievances. Fen slammed his fist against the bag. I don't need more whining. I hear enough grumbling from them now about having their candy supply cut last month. You know they threatened to storm the confectioner shop? Jingles shook his head. That's not nice. I don't think Santa would approve. He's still mad about their dental bills. They were naughty reindeer not brushing their teeth. More trouble than they're worth. Fen glared at Rudolph's stash. You wait and see. These cost-cutting measures will be all about them. We're suffering too. We lost half our coffee budget and the new seasonal uniforms were canceled. No ultra plush red velvet for us, no sir. Not when Rudolph has to eat organic food. It's outrageous. That dratted deer is out of control. When Fen took a breath, he noticed Jingle staring at him, his mouth agape. Fen frowned. What? They cut the coffee budget? Jingles whimpered. Does that mean no more crawlers? What about the peppermint mocha cappuccinos? And that's where we're ending the little snippet from the Reindeer Solution for today. So I hope you enjoyed the reading. And that's it. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and ta-ta for now. See y'all. Bye.